Hello, this is Mark, and I am going to show you in this video how to record a video with the Top View software of the Brownian motion of the microspheres. So I've already prepared a microscope slide with a drop containing microspheres. I've placed it on the microscope and focused it, so I'm all ready to go and look at the view in the CCD camera. So the software is Top View. Just double click to open it. On the right, this will show the main view of the CCD camera. Over here on the left are some control panels. First thing you want to do is you want to check the camera list. You should see a camera listed here. If there is no camera listed, that means you need to check the USB connector. The camera needs to connect to one of the USB ports on the computer. Assuming it shows up, you click on it. This is what the CCD image shows, and I don't know how well it shows up on the video, but you can see that there are microspheres and they are moving about in the solution. On the controls, you have capture and resolution controls, which are relevant, exposure and gain controls. There's a frame rate control, a histogram where you can view the range of brightnesses in the image, and a flat field correction. So I will simply walk you quickly through all the steps that you want to do to set up for and then record a video. So the first thing to notice is that you can set the resolution of the camera for both live view and snap. Snap is simply taking a single image frame instead of a movie. There are two resolutions. There's no reason not to use the higher resolution value in both. There are two options for the file format, RAW and RGB24. You should make sure that that is selected to RGB24, just because that is an easier file format to work with. For exposure and gain settings, I recommend clicking auto exposure initially when you are trying to locate the microspheres and focus and determine what part of the drop you want to collect the video on. It's good to have the auto exposure set. When you are ready to collect your movie though, you will want to uncheck auto exposure and set the exposure time to give you a predetermined frame rate. Down here there is a frame rate tab, but unfortunately, instead of allowing you to enter a particular frame rate, like 15 frames per second, for example, or 1 frame per second, or 2, it just gives you low, medium, and high options. So I recommend leaving it in high, and if you want a frame rate of, let's say, for example, a typical one for this size microsphere that would be good, would be maybe 5 frames per second. To get 5 frames per second, the easiest way to do it is to unclick auto exposure and set the exposure time to be 200 milliseconds. That is 2/10 of a second exposure per frame, which means you will get 5 frames per second. Now, since it's no longer on auto exposure, when you set the exposure time, you may be under or overexposing your image, so I'm just going to adjust the brightness of the microscope light source to give me an appropriate brightness on my image. And I will call that good enough. Okay. Now, down here in the histogram view, this axis shows you the range of pixel brightnesses. 0 completely dark, 255 is the brightest possible channel, and it shows you a histogram of how many pixels it sees of each brightness. You can see we have an image with not a lot of contrast. The individual particles, while they are visible, they're a little bit hard to see. You can improve this somewhat by dragging these sliders to restrict the range of brightnesses. So here I have brought the dark value slider up, and you can see that the particles now are much more noticeable. They are very dark. It has also, though, brought up some background streaks from what I suspect is some cleaning of the internal optics that left some streaks. But fortunately, there's a way to get rid of that. You can also bring down the high level brightness slider, which improves the contrast a little bit. So these are controls. There's no right or wrong value here. You just set it for whatever you think is appropriate and going to give you the best possible image analysis. It's one of those things that an experimenter just has to decide, and it may take a little bit of trial and error for you to figure out what is the optimal value for you. But let's say that we have selected this range of brightness values, and this is what the image is going to look like when we record it. We can now get rid of some of the background junk here by using the flat field correction. So I'm going to remove the microscope slide from the field of view. I'm going to leave all of the other controls the same. And I'm just going to click capture. It's going to capture 5 frames. And now I will click enable. And when I put my microscope slide back in, you can see that a lot of that background, the background streaks and stuff are gone. So the background is a little bit cleaner and more uniform. These sort of diffuse spots here are actually just microspheres that are above or below the plane of focus. So here I have a nice clean background and very nice contrasting microparticles. So this looks like a good settings to record a video. So now I simply go up here. Once I'm happy with that, I click the record button, and you can take the default here, let it be in AVI format. That's easy to work with. You can select the file name. I recommend naming it something sensible, like 1 micron size particles. You can specify the folder you want the video to be saved in. I recommend creating a folder on the desktop with your name on it, and then save all of your movie files to that folder. Leave the default MJPEG compression on, and quality 75 is fine. For the time limit here, you want to set this based on how long you want the movie to run and how many frames you want to analyze. Typically, a movie of more than 300 to 500 frames, the processing time gets to be a little bit onerous. So I recommend that you stay with a total number of frames less than 500 frames. If you're doing just some quick movies to try out some settings and you want to do a quick analysis, you might want fewer frames, only maybe 100. It's kind of up to what you're trying to do. But since I set my frame rate when I set the exposure to be 5 frames per second, if I want 100 frames, I will want to collect for 20 seconds. And then I just say finish. As long as the red record button is on, that means the video is recording. You don't want to bump the table or the microscope, otherwise the particles will jump. And after 20 seconds, the recording will end and your file will be saved. And that is how you record a video.